Hello. Okay, so this is the next video for booklet 1 in the upper sixth, so the Inheritance and Evolution booklet. If you have your notes with you, if you're reading along at home, this begins on page 12. Is it page 12? Yeah, page 12. And it's the pedigree diagrams. Now these pedigree diagrams are used a lot on the A-level biology with inheritance, and they require a good understanding of the genetic crosses and of monohybrid inheritance, essentially, as well as sex linkage. So, if you need to go back and do a bit of revision on that, I've got some videos that you can use, or you can look through your notes or the PowerPoints that your teachers have shared with you. But we'll make a start. So, pedigree diagrams. We want to describe what a pedigree diagram shows and explain how they can be used to show a phenotype, which is caused by either a dominant or a recessive or a sex-linked allele. Okay, so the purpose of a pedigree diagram is to show the pattern of inheritance in a family. Now, pedigree diagrams will always have the same format. A square will always represent a male, a circle will always represent a female, and if that square or if that circle, so there's a shaded circle and shaded squares, if they are shaded, it indicates that there is a characteristic in the phenotype, or that those individuals have a particular phenotype determined by their genetics, by an allele that they possess. So, an example is this. We'll dive straight into the examples because the examples are the best way to try to explain this. People with night blindness have difficulty seeing in dim light. The allele for night blindness, just get a pen up a second. So the allele for night blindness is, here we go, dominant to the allele for normal vision, which is recessive. Okay, so when we read these questions, it's really important to indicate whether the allele is dominant or recessive, which causes this particular characteristic, this particular phenotype. These alleles are not carried on the sex chromosomes, so they are on the autosomal chromosomes somewhere between number 1 and number 22 in a human. Okay, so as we said before, shaded means that the individual has that particular phenotype. Now this is a circle, so a circle is a female, it is shaded. Now that means if night blindness is caused by a dominant allele, she could have, ignoring all the rest of this just for one moment, she could have 2 different genotypes. She could either be homozygous for that dominant allele, or she could be heterozygous. So we need to use the pedigree diagram to determine what number 1's genotype is. And that's essentially what we're doing. It's just a bit of detective work using this pedigree diagram. Now, if it were dominant, if it were homozygous dominant, if she had 2 copies of that dominant N, she would pass on at least 1 dominant N to all of her children. So the children are 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. But we can see that 4, 6, 7 and 9 are unaffected by night blindness, or maybe a better way to describe that is that they have normal vision. So therefore we can eliminate the possibility that number 1 is homozygous dominant. She must be heterozygous, and in fact that is the case. Number 2, he's a male, the father. As this is caused by a dominant allele, we know that he must therefore be homozygous recessive. So, give the genotype of individual number 1 and explain your answer. Well, number 1 is heterozygous, must have at least one copy of the dominant N allele, but because she has unaffected children, 4, 6, 7 and 9, so she must have at least one recessive allele for normal vision. Okay, therefore she is heterozygous. Now we could go through all of these numbers and determine what their genotype is, but we won't. Or shall we? No, we'll just jump onto individual number 12. Okay, we know that 3 and 4, the parents of individual number 12, are normal. They have normal colour vision. We know that the allele that causes night blindness is dominant and therefore would be expressed in the phenotype if it were present. So 3 must be homozygous recessive, 4 must also be homozygous recessive, and therefore 12 has the phenotype would be normal vision and his genotype would be homozygous recessive. Okay, just to check all of that, there we go. As we said, number 1, heterozygous, number 2, homozygous recessive. 3 and 4, we said that both of those parents have normal vision, so they must be homozygous recessive, because we know that that allele for normal vision is recessive. Okay, number 12, he is also homozygous recessive, and therefore, he or she has normal vision. Oh, it says a boy, so he has normal vision. Okay, now on page 12 in your notes, you have this diagram. If you want to pause at this stage, do so, and then you can work through the question. So the evidence from the pedigree, excuse me, that this condition, which is tritanopia, is recessive and not sex-linked. So pause now if you want to work through that yourself. If not, I will give you the answer. So, for a recessive trait, if we want to find evidence that there is a recessive trait, and if the question says give evidence, give means we just need to look for the numbers of the parents and offspring. Give literally means to state the numbers. If it were to say explain, we would then need to give a bit more detail. But for this question, just asking for give. So, for a recessive trait, if you want to provide evidence that the condition, this tritanopia, is recessive, you need to look for 2 parents who are unaffected by tritanopia, but have an affected offspring. Now we can see that 5 and 6 are both unaffected. They have normal colour vision. However, 8 has tritanopia. The only way that 8 can have tritanopia with 2 unaffected parents is if both of these parents are heterozygous. Okay, so if they're heterozygous, we can refer to them as carriers. They can then pass on 2 of those recessive alleles to their daughter here. So the daughter, she would be homozygous recessive, and therefore she would have tritanopia. So if we're looking for evidence of a recessive condition, we look for 2 parents who are unaffected and an offspring who is affected. So the unaffected parents must therefore be heterozygous carriers. The offspring must be homozygous recessive and have that condition. So that's for recessive. For the sex-linked part, well, what we're looking for here are we're trying to, well, let's think about it. If it were sex-linked, the number 8 would have to be homozygous recessive, let's say. So number 8 is female. So she would need 2 X chromosomes. We've already proved that it's recessive. If it were sex-linked, she would need to have 2 X chromosomes, each with a recessive allele. Now that cannot be the case because her father is unaffected, and therefore if it were sex-linked, he would be X with a dominant T allele, Y. Therefore he could not pass on one of these X chromosomes with a recessive. So let's have a look at that in a bit more detail. Or the same detail really, but I've just typed it out for you. So the recessive part, 5 and 6 unaffected parents have 8 an affected child. Now I've put this unaffected and affected, I've put that in italics. It's much safer, rather than using the terms affected or unaffected, to use the specific condition. So in this case, rather than saying unaffected, you might say that 5 and 6 have normal colour vision, whereas 8 affected means they have the tritanopia. So use the context in the question. So in the question, it refers to this eye condition tritanopia, and it also refers to the normal colour vision. It's much, much safer, and in fact, it might be possible to lose marks if you don't use that context. So recessive, so 5 and 6 must be heterozygous carriers. We said that already, we said that they must be heterozygous. And the number 8 must be homozygous recessive. Not sex-linked, 5 and 6 have an affected, unaffected parents have 8 an affected daughter. If it were sex-linked, 6, the father, would pass on, and they've used a capital A there, but it could be capital T. So daughter would be unaffected. So if it were sex-linked, he would pass that on. The daughter would end up being this, and if she had that dominant T, she would have normal colour vision. Okay, now there's a really helpful table in your notes. Okay. If you can learn this table, these are the evidence. So remember I said if it asks to give evidence, you give the numbers of the unaffected parents and the number of the affected child, just like we did above before. So a recessive characteristic, if you're asked to give evidence, recessive characteristic, as we were here, we give the numbers 5 and 6 and 8. Have an affected child, 8. Explanation, well, the parents must be heterozygous carriers. As we saw here, we said that they are heterozygous carriers. In this case, let's just erase that bit because we know that's not true. We'll erase that bit. Now, if it's not sex-linked, you might be asked for evidence for not sex-linked. We're, again, looking for unaffected parents but have an affected daughter. So you want to look for the evidence of an affected daughter is the big giveaway. Now, if you remember back to the sex linkage notes in the sex linkage video that I did before, females must receive 2 recessive alleles, whereas males only require 1 recessive allele for sex-linked conditions. Okay, so the daughter, that's why we look for the daughter there. Okay, evidence for dominant allele. So affected parents have unaffected children. You might question that, but if they're affected parents, perhaps they are heterozygous again. Okay, there is a possibility if the parents are affected, if it's dominant, these two would both show that phenotype. However, their offspring may be unaffected, have normal colour vision, for example, because they are homozygous recessive, because they've inherited those 2 recessive alleles. Not sex-linked but dominant, so affected parents have an unaffected daughter. Again, the father, if it were dominant, the father would be like so. The mother, affected parents could be not sex-linked. Oh, sorry. Ignore that. I've just drawn a sex-linked to that. So, have affected parents have unaffected daughter. So again, the parents could be heterozygous, because if it were sex-linked, the father would pass on the dominant allele on his X chromosomes, so the daughters would be affected. So, not sex-linked but dominant, you're looking for affected parents who have an unaffected daughter, because it would be impossible for a father who had that genotype to have an unaffected daughter if the allele were dominant. So let's have a look at another question. This was a bit of a bigger pedigree, more strands to this family. One piece of evidence that shows that blue eye colour is a recessive trait. Okay, so we're looking for 2 parents with brown eyes giving birth or having children with blue eyes. So here we can see 8 and 9 both have brown eyes. However, they have 13 and 16 with blue eyes. So we can therefore assume that 8 and 9 are both heterozygous. 13 and 15 are both homozygous recessive and therefore have blue eyes. Just as we did previously. So remember, if you're looking for a recessive trait, you want 2 parents who are, let's say, no, I'm not even going to use the term unaffected. But in this case, 2 parents with brown eyes who have a child with blue eyes. Give the genotype of individual number 3. Okay, so there's a brown-eyed male and a blue-eyed female, number 4. So therefore, they also have a child with blue eyes. Number 4 must be homozygous recessive. Number 4, the female can only pass on one of those alleles. So therefore, 3 must be heterozygous as well. Okay, to have a child with blue eyes. What is the probability that the next child born to individuals 8 and 9 will be a girl with blue eyes? So we need to do 2 things here. We need to draw in 2 steps anyway. We need to draw a genetic cross diagram. So we know 8 and 9 would both produce the same gametes. Okay, the likelihood is they would have 3/4 of their children would have brown eyes, but 1/4 down here would be homozygous recessive and have blue eyes. So 1/4. Now it also says in the question, a girl with blue eyes. And we know that there is a 50-50 chance or a half chance of having a daughter. So 1/4 times a half equals 1/8. Or you might say 0.5, sorry, 0.25 times 0.5 equals 0.125. Okay, so you can either show that as a fraction or as a decimal, or you might even have it as a percentage, so 12.5%. Okay, don't show it as a ratio there. Okay, anything else? There are some extra questions. Right, my advice would be to go away and do question 7. Hope it is still question 7 in the question booklet. Let me just check. No, sorry, that has changed now. Let me make the change on here. God, I should have checked this before, really, shouldn't I? So that is now question 6 in the question booklet. Okay, have a go at doing that question, and I will make another video taking you through each of the steps in question 6. Right, so I'll dash through there. Anything else? Okay, I think I'll leave it there, and I will do another video with some examples, with some more examples of the pedigrees from the question booklet. Right, feel free to email me if you've got any questions. Thanks a lot.